But we begin tonight with justice for all, an ideal enshrined in the motto on the Department of Justice seal, Qui pro domina justitia sequitur in Latin, or roughly, he who takes legal action on behalf of Lady Justice. The phrase expresses the ideal of a system of justice in which every American is equal before the law. But if you ask MAGA Republicans, that entire system, state and federal, has been weaponized entirely against one man.
Last week's verdict in New York shows how corrupt, rigged, and un-American the weaponized justice system has become under Joe Biden and Democrats.
It's impossible for anybody to deny that looks at this objectively, that the judicial system in our country has been weaponized against President Trump.
This is a justice system that hunts Republicans while protecting Democrats. This was certainly a hoax, a sham.
The conspiracy calls have become so loud and repetitive that Attorney General Merrick Garland felt the need to speak out today and rebuke the resulting threats against the DOJ and the public servants who serve there. In a Washington Post op-ed, Garland wrote, "These heinous threats of violence have become routine in an environment in which the Justice Department is under attack like never before." Garland specifically mentioned attacks on the special counsel's prosecution of Donald Trump. Now, he could easily have included the state prosecutors, judges, and anyone else involved in any way in holding Donald Trump accountable for his alleged crimes, as well as their families, who've also faced vicious threats from MAGA fans. But that's not in Merrick Garland's purview, because he doesn't supervise state prosecutions, only federal ones. Look it up. It's in the Constitution. So in defense of those federal prosecutors, he added, "We will not be intimidated by these attacks. But it is absurd and dangerous that public servants, many of whom risk their lives every day, are being threatened for simply doing their jobs and adhering to the principles that have long guided the Justice Department's work." And speaking of that work, all of this is taking place as a jury today found Hunter Biden guilty on all counts in his federal trial, tied to his purchase and possession of a gun while using drugs. Like Trump, he faces potential jail time. So let's take a moment to unpack how ironic this is, given all the huffing and puffing from the right. Irony number one involves taking a look at how different the trials of Donald Trump in New York and Hunter Biden in Delaware played out, and who was present for them. Hunter Biden was surrounded at his federal trial by loved ones, including his mom, First Lady Jill Biden. During his trial, she was there nearly every day, showing him love and support. Trump, during his state trial, was mainly surrounded by his federal political surrogates, who even cosplayed in their best Trump look-alike outfits outside the courthouse while launching the vicious attacks that Trump was barred by a gag order from hurling at the judge, his daughter, and the jury. Melania never showed, and the two times Trump's sons, Don Jr. and Eric, showed up, they used their rare appearances to join in the attacks. The right praised those attacks, thought they were awesome. Now take a look at how they portrayed the First Lady showing support for her son.
What message is the White House sending having Jill Biden walk into the courtroom? This is the First Lady of the United States.
Typically, if someone sits there during jury selection, it's because, they're sending a message. They want the jurors to look at you to say, like, look, here we are. This is a big deal.
You got Jill Biden at the trial, but she wasn't just at the trial. She was at the selection of the jury. And I can't help but think that she was there trying to send a message. I'm here. She's got her arms around the family members. And then you've got kind of the mob mentality. We know who you are. We're in the courtroom and we're watching you.
Yeah, so scary having his mom there. Irony number two is that Hunter's case revolves around gun possession. Now, let's not forget that the right doesn't believe in any restrictions on gun ownership. Republicans around the country are looking to arm teachers. They have authorized guns to be brought into mental institutions in Texas. And they want people as young as 18 to be allowed to handle AR-15s, even though those are the weapons of choice for mass shooters. Even as we speak, we are awaiting a decision by the Supreme Court that could allow domestic abusers to have access to firearms. But in this case, the silence from the gun-worshiping right defending Hunter's right to bear arms for a gun he had in his possession for all of 11 days is deafening. And irony number three, I think, is the biggest one. The right says the DOJ is weaponized against Trump. That's kind of hard to see given today's verdict. In fact, it shows that the Justice Department has no problem prosecuting the son of a sitting president. In fact, one could argue Hunter Biden is being treated worse than your average citizen, given how rare a charge like this is. This also marks the first time an immediate family member of a president has been found guilty of a crime during his time in office. We should also note the speed of this case. Unlike Trump, there were no long delays. Hunter Biden could do nothing to stop this trial from moving forward, nor his next one for failing to pay $1 million in taxes that he's already repaid. And the reality is that Hunter Biden is likely going to face the full gamut of consequences for being a felon, including trouble getting a passport, challenges in getting loans, needing to check that felon box when filling out a job application, none of which will likely happen to felon Donald Trump, who, unlike Hunter, is wrapped in the protective cloak of a former president and presidential nominee, and who also happens to lead an upside-down American flag cult that includes members in Congress and apparently even on the highest court in the land. Joining me now is Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida, former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, who served as a senior advisor to the January 6th Select Committee, and Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst. I'm going to thank the member and former member of Congress and turn first to my friend here at the table, Paul Butler. Did I get anything wrong about Hunter Biden's prospects? Because he, like Donald Trump, is now a former felon.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The president has made it clear that his son will have to follow all of the rules and procedures of everyone else who's convicted of a felony, unlike Donald Trump. Again, Donald Trump was convicted in a state system, not a federal system. But apparently, when he went for his interview with the probation officer, he wasn't required to take a drug test, which is required of everybody who's convicted of a crime in New York who's subject to probation. So different treatment for Donald Trump. The president's son, Hunter Biden, not being treated the same as everyone else, in many ways being treated worse. This crime that he's convicted of rarely prosecuted unless the gun was used for a violent crime. In this case, it wasn't.
Yeah.
He had it for 11 days. 10 out of those days, it was in a locked box. It was never loaded. Again, the reason that Hunter Biden is being prosecuted is because he's the son of the president.
I think that's clear, Jared Moskowitz, Congressman Moskowitz. It feels like the Justice Department and the Attorney General went out of their way to get out of the way of this prosecution, which was brought by a holdover from the Trump DOJ. And, you know, the president said he won't touch it. He said he's not going to pardon his son. And it seems that Merrick Garland let it go through. How can the Justice Department be weaponized against Trump when all of that is happening?
No, that's right, Joy. First, thanks for having me. No, we had a Republican prosecutor that was handling this case, right? This had nothing to do with Merrick Garland or Joe Biden. In fact, he's been found guilty, right? I mean, the idea that you now see my colleagues across the aisle trying to say this is all part of the plan, I mean, just sounds ridiculous. But there is something that did, or I should say did not happen, Joy, in this case. You didn't see members of Congress going to the courthouse, standing with Hunter, you know, in their Men's Warehouse suits, holding press conferences. No Democrat is called to defund the FBI or defund the DOJ. No Democrat is calling for civil war as a result. No, Democrats stand for the rule of law. Remember, law and order. You know, and we've been saying that Trump's not above the law, Hunter Biden's not above the law, no one is above the law. And it is amazing to see the stark contrast between how Democrats handled today and how Republicans handled this whole thing over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ugliness of it, the threats against even the jurors, trying to dox the jurors. It's a very different tone, Denver Riggleman. The other thing that I feel like is missing, and this is something that we've talked a little bit about on this show, and I think you're an especially important person to talk about it with, is just the lack of sort of decency on the Republican side here, because you have, in the case of Hunter Biden, somebody who's obviously had deep troubles, problems with drugs, problems in his life. He comes from a background that's full of tragedy, and yet here's his family surrounding him with love. President Biden's statement is actually quite kind, and it's very fatherly and sweet. He says, as I said last week, I'm the president, but I'm also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. So many families who have loved ones battle addiction understand the feeling of pride, seeing someone you love come out on the other side and be so strong and resilient in recovery. As I said last week, I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that. I can't even imagine Donald Trump saying that about any of his children, his family. That is actually loving your kid. And I don't understand why Republicans don't even have compassion for that.
I don't either. And I think what's so damaging about it is that the first thing is that they have the conspiracy theories coming out. Jared already talked about it, right? And, Jared's going to probably be horrified by this, but I do shop at Men's Warehouse sometimes. And the other thing, too, about this that's sort of nuts, right, is the awfulness about addiction. I was in Congress when I lost my cousin 2 blocks away to an overdose. I've had 2 very close family members die, transient drug use. But also doing some, just some awful things, when it comes to drugs. And I remember, if you're there watching somebody die, or you're there and you get the phone call that somebody dies from addiction, that is absolutely brutal. And the fact that people are treating Hunter like this, I think really speaks to what the far right is doing. But the other thing that's even just as bad is this conspiracy theories coming out. And I think Jared actually alluded to it, that the guilty trial or the guilty verdict for Hunter was actually a fig leaf to actually cover up the real crimes of Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, which is on its face completely ludicrous. And by the way, Joy, I don't know if you know this, you're part of the corporate globalist media that's actually coordinating with the Biden campaign. I'm just letting you know what's happening out there. Yeah. That you're like, that Joe Biden's the embodiment of the rule of law. No, this is a conspiracy, and the Hunter Biden guilty verdict was actually part of the plan all along. This is insane. It's just incredible that we're going through this right now in our American system.